Happy Thursday, everybody. This is Elisa from the Rebel Crone. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time or have come across this video for the first time, I want to introduce my friend Maurice. And every Thursday, well, almost every Thursday, we missed a little bit over the holidays, and that was kind of mostly my fault. But we both were traveling a little bit. But every Thursday, we attempt to get together and talk about life. We don't pre-plan our conversation. We just simply go with the flow. And I find it to be incredibly rewarding experience. These conversations and the insights that come up, I find they're very powerful, and I hope that you enjoy it. So welcome to Thursdays with Maurice. My name's Elisa, and here's my buddy Maurice. Hi.
Hey there, everybody. Hey,
Happy
Elisa.
New Year. Hey. Happy New Year. This is being recorded actually right on Thursday. Sometimes we do it earlier and then I just post it on Thursday, but this actually we're doing the day after New Year's. Oh my goodness gracious. Are we off to a roaring start or what?
Yep, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you don't even have to go overseas anymore. It's right here on the home scene, big time.
Yeah, no, it's just really interesting. I did a video on the day before the new year on would have been Tuesday. Did you check? Have you seen that yet, Maurice?
I actually did, yeah.
Okay, cool. So maybe we could use that as just kind of like the starting point. I feel like it was sort of an offshoot of our last conversation. Because remember, we were talking a lot, Maurice, about just I think, would we call it like synergy? How aligning things up in our lives and how things tend to be for a lot of people, for the world as a whole, but even as individuals, is that we're being drawn synergistically to the things that resonate with us. So the video I did with my New Year's message was really about one word that came to me, and it was reconciliation. And we see it going on in like a big scale, with things being reconciled as far as truth coming out about what's really going on with people, organizations, institutions, all of that. But also importantly is reconciliation within us, with the truth of who we are and, finding that and what, that's the journey. But where you are like right now is that reconciliation of the higher self to the lower self, and then allowing that to go out and reconciling your world so that it all lines up. So I kind of like to use that as a starting point, Maurice, to kind of launch into our chat of on all possible things.
Wow. That's such a wide, broad subject. Reconcile. First of all, the word reconcile itself has I never much cared for it, to be honest with you, primarily because implied it or implicit in it, as I was educated along the way, was kind of like, yes, making peace, but it was also like a false forgiveness. In other words, we're again, it's the definition of the word and the meaning of the word that is I never much liked using it, to be honest with you, because it was like forgive, another word, where it's so often it's misinterpreted. It's like you're supposed to absolve something that takes two, not just the actions of one, if you know what I'm talking about. And you can't it's just difficult to
let me help. Let's see if this helps with this, Maurice. Is because I feel like, and I see where you're going with this, and it's semantics. Once again, it's semantics. It's putting words on an idea and on an energy and a spirit, on whatever it is. We're trying to put words into form to describe something, because there is, we're taught, and there's a lot of biblical things, with reconciliation, and there's a lot that's, oh, just reconcile because it's the proper thing to do. You put on the nice smiley face, and even reconcile within yourself. Oh, yeah, no, I'm at peace, and it's really, you have not truly done it. Like forgiveness, we can say, oh yeah, I forgive you, but do we really forgive the person?
no.
Is how deep does that go? Or are we just playing lip service to doing it, and then we'll do our go to mass on Sunday and sit in the little, whatever they do, the little confessional. It's a funny example of it, but there's something true about that, is that we just, okay, and then we put it all out, and then we just go back and do the same thing.
It's
One
not
part,
genuine.
yeah,
I think what you're getting at, and what I'm getting at too, less eloquently than you, is that it's not genuine. And the whole thing is to reconcile. I'm just listening and kind of thinking along. There is a way where that word does work, but it's an internal process within one person. It doesn't take two people. If you can reconcile a situation, that means you can finally understand it and move on from it. It
yes,
doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't absolve anything from what happened, but you can free yourself from the connection to it. That's where the reconciliation comes in. You understand what's going on, and therefore it's no longer an issue with you, and you can move on in your life. In that
yeah,
sense, I think
absolutely. Mhm.
reconciling does have meaning, but it's
Yeah.
generally, I don't think it's interpreted that way by most people because they're not given that kind of an insight as to what it means or can mean.
Yeah, I hear you. And I hope that my video was inspiring given that, and that didn't trip people up, because the reconciliation I was talking about was really coming into this personal alignment, the deepest part of yourself. The absolute
Absolutely. Yeah.
core of core is who you are, that projection of the God being, of who you are. That's the core. Reconcile that puppy up. You reconcile that baby, and then go forth and do whatever. And
Exactly true. Exactly true.
yeah,
If you can do that, if you actually can do that, or if it actually happens in your life, um, then you move forward in a wholly different approach to everything. That you don't
yeah.
respond to things like you used to as a victim or anymore. You really don't. A situation occurs, you say, okay, how do I deal with it and move on from it? Because you and I both know the whole business of the ever present now. We don't, most of us, including myself, do not live in the ever present now, at least intellectually, emotionally, in our own heads. But we do, we're at least aware of the fact that the closer we get to that, the better off we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
And
process, Maurice. Do you
it
find
is.
in your life? Because I find like I'm in like at my age and gone through what I've gone through and everything, that now there's times I can really focus in on that and I'm really there. And then I go off like that and it's like, oh, and then you got to get back on. So it's a choice in every now, every moment, every day. It's like that choice where, the things of life do buffet us around,
They do. Absolutely.
they
The
just
wind blows.
do. Yeah, it blows and it knocks us off. I think, though, the stronger we get being in our center, having reconciled, be in that center, remembering that place, remembering that feeling, remembering how we got there, what was the pathway to have that experiential, have that
Mm-hmm.
experience, then we can get back to it. But it's, I talk about these things, but it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, yes, I have reconciled my inner and my
Yeah.
outer.
I am the
And
perfect being walking across the earth 4 feet off
oh,
the ground. Yeah,
yeah, I'd
bullshit.
say, who needs to walk? We float.
Yeah. The thing about it, though, is I will say this much, and I've seen it in others as well. You're much quicker to get back to the center point than you ever were before. And that's a process. Are we always? No, we're not these, as human beings, we're not these divine beings, walking around like that. But there are levels of accomplishment, if you will, and there is improvement available and possible to everybody. And I do what I kind of talk about, and you do as well, is the closer you can get to that, the more aware you are of that, the better off you will be. And it's a process, and nobody's identical to the next person. They're not. We're in different spots in our lives, and we're coming from
Yeah.
different. In the end, we are all unique beings. The world would have us all believe we're all the same, but we're not, and yet we are. That's almost a,
Yeah.
yeah. What is that? what do they call it? Where you got a situation of two opposite things at the same time.
Paradox.
Paradoxical. That's the word. Yes, and yes, I do know that word. It just,
I know.
yeah, it's a
They come
paradox.
sometimes and they don't come sometimes,
That's
It's
exactly right. Well, it gets better as you get older, I'm told.
oh, it does. That's funny. Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's quite the journey. And I think as we set out into 2025, there's a great reckoning coming on this planet. And everything's heightening. The game, I feel like the game that's being played between, the invisible forces and, humanity and then us as individuals, that's just going on steroids. But the good news about it for me is that as much as being poured into uh, 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 keeping the lie going, the lies that have been going, that's getting like all the energy going that's all this energy. I don't know if I can quite say this right, but all that same amount of energy is going into the wake up process, where that's all available to us. It's like polarizing. It is polarizing on steroids.
Absolutely,
And
that's true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it really is. And I mean, already I feel like hang on.
The funny thing about that, though, is the public media, the venue, the people that we listen to with our five senses, our eyes, our ears, primarily what we read,
Yeah.
what we see, what we hear from outside sources, they're not preaching that inner message much at all. At least especially in the mainstream. Even in the alternative media, you still got a lot of confusion being thrown out there for all kinds of reasons. The funny thing is, though, and like you said, it's true, the internal volume has gone up as well. That source of information, whatever it is, really is growing within people, and it's of equal, and I would maintain it's even stronger value, intensity from within. It is there, but you can't hear it with your ears or see it with your eyes. You certainly can't taste it, or smell it. That's four of the five at least. But the point is, it's there, and but not everybody. Apparently, not everybody is receiving the same intensity level. But the ones that are, and they know it, and we're talking about it out loud here, at least.
Well, that's our audience. I think people
Yes,
that don't have that aren't going to be particularly attracted to what we have to talk about.
I think
But
that's likely true.
I have to just say for myself, without going into any details, the volume is up to 13. It's just like it's way up right now. And
Well, I notice it internally for me. I notice it.
Yeah.
And if it's true within me, then it's true within a lot of people of similar inclination. Let's put it that way, to be general, or try to be general.
Right.
That
Right.
still doesn't cover the whole spectrum of everybody walking around, and we know that.
No, because I know people that life is just, it's the new year. It's just another,
Yeah.
they're just kind of do walking through their pathway. And that's fine. That is not my concern. My concern is this, is that true reconciliation, is to listening to the voice, honoring it, and then acting upon it, and that's where that's the courage part, I feel like, is, can we act on it? We don't, Jason's always saying about, we're not here to save the world. I completely agree. We're not here to save the world.
Oh, he's right about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. We're not even to save ourselves, because we don't need saving, right? Because we're being projected into this time space continuum for a very short period of time. We're going to die. We're going to die. So you can't say like that, but it's like, for me, I feel like it's how much connection can I have with the truth of who I am, and like merge this human animal being with this immortal divine being. How well can I get that together so the two can play together?
That's the growth process keep talking about, the internal growth process. It's never, well, we've got our avatars, I guess, is one way they express people that existed in time. Used to be one every 500 years. I used to use that as a thing. It's Anymore, it's more than one every 500 years. Thinking of Buddha and Jesus and Krishna and that kind of thing, and various people along the way that were put up to be. Oh, Rumi, another one. Uh, God realized beings, or so they say. Well, most of us don't walk around with that understanding of ourselves. But the thing of it is, it's starting to show itself within the, yeah, actually we are. And
Yeah.
it is a reality to be experienced in this form. Now, perfectly, no, we're not walking around as if we are only that. We're walking around knowing that we are human beings with limitations, and we accept that as part of the reality. And therefore, when we do stumble or say the quote wrong thing, which turns out a lot of times not to be the wrong thing, it's just awkward, which causes hurt feelings sometimes. But nonetheless, in retrospect, you look back and you say, "Well, holy shit! I'm glad I said it because it needed to be said." But it was uncomfortable. I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't like to make people uncomfortable. But sometimes shit needs to be said.
Oh my gosh, you're like, I don't know how you got off on that one, but that
I
one
don't
is
either.
hit really close to, that's hitting really close to the choir right here.
Oh.
But that's okay. That's for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, I hear you on that one. And um, yeah, and that's that authenticity we often talk about. We kind of always come back to, I feel like we have a different conversation every time, but there's just so many themes of life, right, Maurice? There's only so many themes. We can extrapolate and go off on offshoots, but it always comes down to just basic stuff. And something I was you're saying just kind of flashed to me about what we're capable. This is maybe a little woo woo, but go with me on it, okay?
Sure.
I'm sure you can ground it. You can ground it in your own way. But for me, that there's I'm only expecting to be able to go so far in this avatar and in this consciousness. In part for a few different things is I didn't come in, I'm not a Buddha, I'm not a Jesus, I'm not one of the big
Whatever.
masters coming in, whatever.
Mm.
But I can master many things. um but it feels like we're coming into like as being a party humanity. I've always felt like I'm on the outer edge of it, like a pioneer. And I'm sure you felt this too, this like pioneer, this kind of busting through new things and new territory. And there's a lot of being alone and a lot of whacking through the jungle, so to speak, finding a way. um and then so there's that going. I feel like in just who's incarnate right now and where humanity is at that level and our place in it, where we can bust ahead. But do you think in like the next generations coming up, we've already cleared this pathway, they can bust ahead from there and there. So like the kind of the ultimate goals of what I would say is like heaven on earth is this beautiful harmonizing of the physical avatar with the immortal, completely still autonomous, the physical being, not an autotom of the immortal, but a free will, but also act of merged with the will and accepting of the will of the higher self. So the two kind of play together. So we're on the process of that merging. So I'm trying to say is that for me, I have to just, because I so much want to be that. I so much know that that is like my inheritance, like that, is, what's the dream or the goal. Yet here I am right now in this point in time, humanity's where it is,
Mm.
and as I pioneer, like I'm designed to pioneer so far forward. Some of the big masters who come in were ones that like they blast it right through, right? And they just created these incredible pathways for other people to follow. So I
So
guess when
we're
we say
told.
what, yeah,
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 so we're
exactly.
told.
However, whoever, there's certain ideas that came in at certain times during history that did create a pathway. Some of the pathways were, you know, uh, hijacked a little bit,
A lot.
a lot, a little bit, a lot. I guess what I'm trying to get at that is that we've got, just the reality of what we've come into. And we also have like a hereditary, we have a genetic reality. that we come into. And so it just, this is being forgiving and gracious with ourselves, because there's a lot to navigate right now. That's my point I'm trying to get to, is there's just so much to navigate being a human right now at this point in time. And we can take it far, and we need to take it far. How far we can go, we'll see.
It's not for you or I to determine that. That's not our part. That's not on our plate to do. What we are here to do, though, is to be the best we can as in the moment we find ourselves, and that, you know what, that's sufficient. If you can accept that what you do as you do it is sufficient, then you can walk freely in this world, as freely as anybody, can walk freely. You don't sit there and berate yourself. You just know implicitly that what you've done is the exact right thing to do. That, people use the word integrity, but that works. You walk in integrity. There's another word that I like even better, is you walk in a state of grace, gracefulness. Usually that's implied to a woman, not to a man, but graceful is to me, that's a hell of a compliment. To be in grace is great, without the religious connotations, graceful, your grace and all of that horseshit. I'm talking about a way of being. If you can walk through gracefully through life, that means appropriate at every turn, no matter what. You do the right thing, and it works. And you just do it. That is who you are. That's manifesting a very, very, very high nature of the potential of the humanity that does walk around. Now that most people don't do that, or don't understand it, or think of it in those terms, that's a reality. But it's still there to be had. And if you're focused on or allowing for that to exist within your life, and you're kind of aware, and you don't sit there and have to think over which is which every move. You start doing it naturally. And then you flow with it. And then you don't have to think about it. You just are it.
You just be it. It's a natural state. And there's key underpinnings to that, Maurice. And I feel like the key underpinnings to grace. And there's masculine grace and there's feminine grace. They're expressed beautifully differently. For me to be in my grace as a woman and you to be in your grace as a man, they're different, but it's still grace.
They're similar, but they're different, sure.
But yeah, they're expressed differently. But for me, while you're talking, I'm just thinking about, and we've talked about this many times, we've talked about some of the fundamental principles. But for a state of grace, there are fundamental principles that we have to recognize, acknowledge, and actually act on. And one of those is what we mentioned earlier, is forgiveness. To be in a state of forgiveness within yourself. Because if you truly forgive yourself and you're at peace, because you're not judging yourself, you're not judged, you're doing the best you can do, that it's so easy to extend to other people. You can't be graceful if you're judging other people, and you can't forgive other people. There's no graceful action that comes, because there's always going to be that underlining energy about it, dissonant energy from grace. Does that make sense?
It does, but again, I get hung up on that word about forgiving. I think it's a definitional thing with me, and that one in particular, because implicit to me is when you say I forgive somebody, that goes along with the word absolve them, and sometimes they're not willing to change. That just says, okay, I did what I did, and I don't have to pay. I can just be a slob, and you're sitting over here having to forgive that. What does that mean? Well, you can't just walk away from it. You say, no, that's wrong. And they say, well, I don't care. And you say, well, I'm supposed to sit here and forgive that? No, what you end up doing in that situation is you forgive. You walk away from that environment is what you do. You don't allow it into your existence. And if they want to sit there and not bear their own responsibility for whatever the hell is requiring forgiveness, then you need to not be there.
let's clarify that, because I think,
Okay.
like, there's so many things going on within me when I say that, that I'm glad you brought that up, because it just helps me kind of clarify more what I'm talking about with that. Because there's advice that I give my fellow girlfriends.
There you go.
There's something happens. All right. So then there's a miscommunication, an upset, something goes on, or you're friends for a while, then all of a sudden something's revealed that's like,
Yeah,
it's
I've
not
seen that happen
working.
along the way. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what my advice always is that, that's is not, don't have to get angry. You don't have to get like fight and get all this bristling about it, because that just takes you down. What you now understand about that, you understand something about that person now. So instead of having this person close into you, that's not working, is this put them in an outer orbit, put them in the right orbit around you, where I'm not going to maybe trust them by confiding in them. I'm not going to do, all these things, because it's not, that person isn't capable of reciprocating and being in your close orbit, because this to me is like a sacred orbit, my inner orbit. Then I've got other orbits going out,
Right.
so there's that part of it, is finding the right orbit for people in your world. Something's revealed and you see something about them. No, Matt, you don't need to get your panties in a bind. Just, they're out there now. They don't need to be in here. But forgiveness, you forgive because you do that for selfish reasons, because you don't want to carry on this. I can't judge somebody for what they've done, because I have no idea what has gone into it for them. You know
Good
what
point.
what's going on in their world and everything, and what they've experienced. And they're an amalgamation of all kinds of the past, of lineage, their history, their genetics, their upbringing, all of that. And I can't, so I don't understand it, but I can say it doesn't work for me. So you're out here now, you're not in here, and I bless you on your way. I hope you learn your lessons, and then you just let it go. Because if you hold on to grudges, it's that energy in your body, and it takes you down. But not forgiving somebody is like, I can't be their judge and jury. I don't have the facts. I barely have the facts on myself.
Very true.
Does that
Very
help? Does
true.
that kind of make sense a little bit more?
It
Because,
makes a hell of a lot of sense, and it's actually
okay,
true. It is actually it. Well, look, in my case, a lot of times I see things amongst people happening that don't happen to me, but I know the people involved, and somebody upsets somebody else by some behavior or wording that they used amongst themselves, between themselves. I'm kind of informed about it, and I say to myself, well, it didn't happen to me. Now, what am I supposed to do about it? And be aware of the fact that it transpired, and that's where you were coming in with, well, what level of closeness do you want with that person? And because they did this one thing, do you discount them completely and walk away? But they got all these other good qualities that are admirable and helpful, and you can work with and be with and enjoy together. So you're right. And that is actually how we actually function in our own worlds, even with our closest, which would be in this, I'll speak standard American. Supposedly the closest person to you is your husband or your wife. I know they don't use those words much anymore, but it's always what is it? Partner, I guess is the,
partner.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's changed muchly, but anyway, um, even in those kinds of relationships, you've got issues between the people, or there have been many cases where that has occurred. I will say they're not all, you know, like it's written up in a storybook. But then Prince Charming doesn't usually ride into a woman's life on a white horse anyway. You know,
It's the Disney princess syndrome. I talked about that a while ago in a video. Is like, oh my God, ladies, wake up to how ingrained that is
yeah,
into us.
yeah,
That
and it
is,
is too. Boy, it was
oh,
worse when I was growing up than it is now by a long shot.
Oh my God, it's just different. It's still there. It's just different. It's just morphed
Mhm.
into different things. But I think going back to the other point, because we love our tangents, that the whole thing on forgiving is about this like not being the judge and jury on anything because I really can't. I really don't have the factors for it. And it's not my assigned job. So I let go of that burden because really being not forgiving someone is a burden you carry because there's all this stuff goes on with within you, whether it happened to you or happened to somebody else, and especially if it happened to somebody else that you really love. What's the most loving thing you can do is just be loving in the situation, and help them to sort that out. But I really feel like we're our own little universe. If you want to go into the uniformitarian model of things,
Sure.
we've got all the orbits around us, and we just figure out like what is the authentic place for people, and they show their colors. It's like, okay, so that's what's really going on there. And I think a lot of times we know, like we've had clues, like we something's been there like all along, like little signs and stuff, but we just have this fun because we got a new friendship or a new romance or something, so we
Mhm.
don't want to look at those things. As time goes on, they come up. Now, either you're, committed in the friendship or in the partnership, and you want to work through all that because that's kind of what they're designed to do. You can work through those, or they're not, or there's just some kind of incompatibility there. And then you just have to figure out that place. And maybe that person is just gone, or maybe it's in another place in your world. And then just don't worry about it. Just let
Yeah.
it, for me, it's just like, let it go then. And
Well, that's that. Here you go. You're making a case for living in the ever present moment again, whether you realize it or not. That is how it actually. That's how you walk through all of this stuff. The closer you are, and less involved you are in memories and old scores to be settled or not settled or whatever the hell. That's all memory, and that is living in the past, isn't it?
yeah,
It literally is, and it's not allowing for anything new to arise because you got whoever it is stuck in this mold that happened could be 10 years ago by now or 10 minutes ago. Time is, doesn't matter actually. Once it's in the past, it's in the past. But you got them stultified, whatever that way how you say that word. They're stuck. So you got this image of somebody, but that's not the reality of what that person is because they're changing out at a moment just like you are.
they are exactly. Oh my
And
gosh,
you
I
have to
think,
allow for that. And
yeah,
that's part of being aware. The more aware you are, the better able you are to deal with the current situation in the most appropriate manner, as opposed to uh, the normal manner, the predictable manner, the stuck in the mud manner of walking around with a whole lot of memories of what happened, what here, there, and the other place, and it's not a real. It's a fantasy land.
it
It,
is.
it's it's a fantasy land.
It's an illusion by this point. It's a mirage. It's an illusion. It's how you viewed something in the past. And then you
Correct.
don't forgive it. You like lock it in time, and you lock all of that, the trauma, the upset, all of that, you lock it in time, you lock it within yourself. And then you're also imprisoning the other person into it's like a fantasy. Because we all perceive things differently. You have an upset with somebody, they're gonna walk, everybody walks away with a different thing about it. Usually it's pointing the finger at the other person, right?
Typically, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, it's just like that. Oh, that's just like a whole other train there, Maurice. It's just memories and stories, the stories we tell ourselves,
Yeah. Well, listen,
right?
we're talking from experience on this one. We both walked through that, and we're still subject to walking through it tomorrow too. We know that. At least we're freaking aware of it, so we're less likely to be caught in it because it is a trap, and we at least are able to, right here and right now, able to discuss it as such. And it just in the very doing of that keeps it us from being as susceptible as we might otherwise have been to walking into another freaking trap that is available to us because there's all kinds of them out there and every which way you look, but especially to the outside world, you've got all kinds of things that are sitting there waving their flags for you to be, chasing after. Anything to keep you from looking inside and finding your inner solace, your inner
Oh my
inner
gosh.
strength.
It's so true, Maurice. And when you're talking, I'm just thinking about all of Hollywood, all of our stories we're given,
Absolutely.
all of our movies and stuff are all, there's so many of them. It's just about revenge. Is like we even the score because we get revenge from somebody that did us wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
how
Oh
many
boy. Yeah.
storylines are that? So it's ingrained. Like, how do we resolve conflict? We resolve conflict by giving them their just desserts. They deserve it. Well, that is such an animalistic way. That's
It's
even
low
like
level, that's for sure.
it's low level. I mean, that'd besmirch animals, at that one, but it is like super low level functioning. It's not yours to give out justice. Something interesting. I had a comment that came through on one of my videos recently, and it may have been the one I was talking about forgiveness. And I think it was the one I did. I made a comment of the whole video about Jason's video he did on Christmas Day on the real teaching of Jesus.
Right.
And the comment was, I still have to address it, but they said how I just can't get over the hump of like with pedophiles and murderers and whatever, like the people is forgiving them. And so I've been thinking about that, like how to comment about that, because it is a stumbling block because there's some egregious things that people do, and why, like, how do you forgive that? And, it's like, if we get this, so this is like my answer. I'm working through it. I want you to add to it, Maurice.
Sure.
But if we work, if we give up carrying the burdens of judging people, of being worried about whether, they get their just desserts, because you did something horrible, you're a pedophile, that's clearly not a good thing,
Mhm.
but if we go from more of a, for me, like from more of an immortal perspective, that what happens, the insults and injuries and violations to these bodies are just with the avatar. It's not with the immortal. We will pass out of this world. But that clearly those patterns don't work in this world. But we can't, like, if we carry the emotional charge of getting worked up about it, it then affects us.
Mhm.
And we have to just, I guess, the thing we have to rest in is that person, there's going to be, a big reconciliation that's going to happen to people that have so egregiously violated the laws of free will and love. That you don't get away with that. In fact, the punishment we can do in this world isn't going to be anything compared to, as a soul, what they're going to have to experience and go through to understand what that's like, whether they incarnate then as somebody that has then gets victimized, or it's like their soul's gonna, there's gonna be lessons learned with that. We don't have to worry about that. Do you know what I'm saying with it? I don't know
Yes,
if
I
that.
absolutely do, and it's you're right in pointing it out, and it's a part of hell. How to respond or add to this? You made so many points that are right on point. First of all, it's not yours to be the judge.
Mhm.
The one positive you can do is say, "I'll never do that." That is the
Yes.
one thing you can control, your life.
Yeah.
That somebody else does it. Well, you can also say there's other people do it. There's such a thing as cannibalism in the world. There's such a thing as all kinds of atrocities in the world. Are we supposed to sit there and find out everybody that's doing all these evil things and evil things we never heard of that we got to find out about? What is that doing? It's keeping us locked into our into the trap of the mind, trying to find out this, that, and trying to find out everything about everything, which is an impossible task, and we all know that's an impossible task against, hell, even the AI computers. They can keep us going for many lifetimes with new information already. It's a
Ugh,
trap. And if
it's
you
a trap.
realize it
Yeah.
as a trap, then you can free yourself from that trap, and you're not bound by it anymore. You're not caught by it.
And
It's
those
not
traps
ours
are the
to do.
school. those traps are in the stories we tell, and the stories that we start getting the story about judging somebody for something, and we get worked up about it and we feel really bad about it and blah 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 blah. Then all of a sudden it becomes our story. I don't want any of those stories to be my story. I work really hard at keeping my slate clean as
Agreed.
I
Yeah.
can. So I get really careful about what I'm going to ingest and then how I'm going to respond to it. Do you know what I mean?
I do
And
absolutely know. That's the whole thing. How do you want to live your life? That is the real question. How does your life? You've only got this one life, as far as you know, this time around. You want to live it to the best of your ability, not to be just whipped around by external events every which way to China and not knowing anything about anything ever again. You want to have a clear vision of what you of the life that you can develop with your talents, such as they are in the circumstances you find yourself, and you want to experience it in the most pleasant way possible for yourself. Well, how do you do that? One of the things you don't do is spend your time trying to find out fault with everybody else along the way.
that's a truth trap. Maurice, that's a truth trap right there. So how many times have you been around people that they're like, I'm so sensitive to energies and I feel everybody's energy, and they can pinpoint like all what's wrong with everybody, and they feel so elevated because they have the sense and they can read a person and pinpoint that. But they're so caught up in it, and they're caught up in all the judgment of it. I mean, that's like the very baby step is like, okay, so you can read people. Good for you. Now, what do you do with that? But I think that that is in and of itself is like, I am just this evolved person because I've got this extra sensory perception of stuff. I'm sorry. That's one of my things I've heard so much over the
Well,
years. And in fact,
I don't run into too many guys that talk that way, but I do. I have met a few women that have mentioned that along the way.
I know a few guys that actually think like that.
Really? Well, I'm sure there are
Because they've
some.
got a strong feminine nature that they can perceive things. It's like, yeah, you can perceive things. That is step one. Good for you. Now, what do you
Yeah.
do with that? And that's when grace comes in, right? That's where the grace stuff comes in, when we have to learn how to gracefully navigate, being more, especially as we become more enlightened, as we lighten up and as we become more aware and more awake, using all these cliches. But as we move up the scale of divine evolution, let's
The
say,
energy, yeah, just raising your energy level. That's easy enough to
yeah,
understand. Uh,
raising your energy level, that
yeah,
just keep going with that. There's a certain threshold you cross where you are then bequeathed with extra sensory perceptions of it. You understand it. You walk in the room, you feel it more keenly. People, you can tell, like you come up to a friend and you look at him, you just
mhm.
know something's right. Whereas you
Yeah,
have
it's a
people,
side effect.
yeah, you could just feel all this stuff and become more sensitive. But that doesn't mean we get reactive to it and we get sucked into it. It's just, we have more responsibility than to hold a place of grace for them. Not judge them, not judge or get upset with the people they're upset with, is just to really hold like a certain place of still. It's like it comes down to love, you know,
Mhm.
as loving people where
Well,
they
and
are.
part of love is tolerance. That means, but tolerance doesn't mean acceptance of everything that comes along. It just means understanding.
But that's a tricky word, Maurice. That's like all the other words we've been using.
Agreed, and I
Tolerance
just caught
doesn't mean
myself
like,
thinking about it too.
yeah, exactly. I suck it up and I'm going to tolerate you at the expense of me because I've got to tolerate these things. I'm being the good person and I tolerate you and this is my life. No, I understand it. Maybe toleration is like, okay, you do your thing, that's fine, but you're not going to do it right here. You're going to do it out there, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And so you do tolerate it, but you just know that it
It's
ain't going
not.
to be.
It ain't going to be done around here in this environment. And you do, and that that's boundaries. It's actually it's a word. It's a good word, but it's not the only answer. I've used that along the way, especially I found it appropriate with women, but mostly, but men as well. Um, but that's not even the ultimate. It is. You have to have limits to what's acceptable in your environment. So yeah, there's things that you won't tolerate in your environment one way or another. You'll either stop them from occurring or remove yourself from a situation where they're going to occur and you don't belong.
Hmm.
Okay, that is boundaries. There's another way to look at that too. And I think you pointed it out several discussions ago. You get to a point where your energy level goes where they don't interact with you anymore. You can be in the same room with them, and they don't see you. You don't see, well, you might see them, but
Yeah.
they don't bother you.
Exactly, exactly. So, but if it's bothering you, so this is the key, right, Maurice? If it's bothering you, then there's something about you that's there. Do you know what I mean? Instead of
Good
judging
point.
someone there, if you have to judge somebody, usually judge it because you're worked up about it. And if you trace that down the rabbit hole, it's because you're judging yourself because you got that very same trait and it pisses you off about you. So it pisses you out about that person. It's all there. It's all a mirror. Everything that we respond to. So if somebody's vibrating down there, i.e. they're doing the like,
Whatever, yeah.
lower level behavior, and you have higher level behavior. And if instead of just like, and you're clear with it, then you just two ships passing in the night, you be in the same room, whatever, nothing, it just doesn't, it goes by you. But if it connects to you and it pisses you off and if it bothers you, I would say behooves you to trace it that it's about you because there's something of you that's down there that you haven't forgiven in yourself,
Could be,
and
could be. And
yeah.
you're probably right. You're probably right. Most guys, well, I'll speak for myself. I don't go that deep, generally speaking. Women, I bet, at least the women I talk to, and you're not the only one I talk to, but
I'm not your only one, Maurice.
no, no, but you're a damn good one. I'll give you that. But I know several like you. I know more than several like you. That are, man, am I a lucky guy?
You're a lucky guy. I gotta tell you, you're a lucky guy. You're attract. See, you. That's something about you's attracted that. You
I
know.
guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a
I love
non-threat,
it.
I guess. That's a good thing to say.
It's more than that, though. It's more than that. It's a resonance. It's a resonance
It
thing.
could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I forgot what I was going to
Oh,
say.
and we're talking
Okay.
about the whole thing, like women being maybe more sensitive and going deeper into
Yeah,
things
they
than
are.
men usually
They
believe in.
generally are, and I don't have an answer for that. You have to deal with what you got.
Exactly. But well, trust me in the thing where if you have, it's not just me, it's kind of this is something I've learned, and who knows, from where, whatever, but over time that, if you have an emotional reaction to something in your world, whether it's happening directly to you or it happened to somebody you love, and you have a charge, if there's a charge, I mean, people talk about like buttons, if your button gets pushed, in other words, if you have a charge, that
Yeah.
means you got a button.
Well,
There's a button
obviously
there.
through there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that button's connected to you. As opposed to other people, it's not connected to your button, and people can do all kinds of things and stuff, and you're like, boop,
Yep.
you have another perspective. But if it pushes your button, that's what I'm trying to say with different words. If it pushes your button, then that button's attached to you. It's attached to something. It would behoove you to look at why did that bother me so bad? Why? There's something in it. There is a little golden opportunity for me to look and say, where maybe is that a behavior like I've been doing, that why did that piss me off in the other person?
Yeah.
Chances are that you're like that sometimes, and it's like, all right, now I know what that looks like and feels like, and I don't want to be that. So I'm going to let it go, or I'm going to move past that.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Like I say, women tend to do that more frequently than men do. I do know that much, and
I think
that's all I
so.
was going to say.
And it's frustrating. That's part of the this another tangent warning. Beep beep. That's part of I think the challenge with men and women is one of these differences. Because I know from like my girlfriends and that there is a part of them that wants a man to be like that and to talk and be with a man like that. But men
Yeah.
do things differently, and you have your girlfriends for that. Not to say there aren't some men like that, but
Well,
there's different. We have
agreed.
different brains.
But you're right. You're absolutely true. But that's men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's all there is to it. It's a simplified way of saying it, but effectively, I also say vive la difference.
Yeah, vive la difference. Exactly. Oh my God, blessed differences. Um,
But we're not the
yeah,
same. We're close enough to be in the same proximity a lot of the time, but we're not the same.
yeah,
It just, and the one is not better than the other. They're different from one another. That's the thing
yeah.
that I do notice externally in society. It's like it's a competition. In order for women to be good, men have to be bad or less than.
Yeah.
That's been the push since I've watched it happen. Hell, I was young when it started, relatively speaking. Yeah, externally in society, it started in the '60s, the mid '60s onward. Yeah, with the women, the storyline, the
Women's lib
women's
stuff.
lib. Yeah, yeah. Well, but at the sacrifice of what? Well, that now you get into the social programmers, and you find out, well, there's a hidden agenda in all of that stuff that was not presented, and people who didn't know that, which is everybody damn near, fell for the thing. Yeah, of course we want women to be equal, and yes, they've been abused along the way. That's for sure. That's what I imply. The '50s and the '60s, early, especially the '50s and probably the '40s and beyond, or back further in time, women were even more pigeonholed in this society. That is true. I watched it growing up, but they perverted. That's it. They perverted everything. They pervert everything. They have a good intention and then they pervert it. And
Well, I
and
don't even know if there's a good intention, but it is a perversion. It's all about divide and conquer, right?
and that though,
Is
yeah,
that we divide up the power of the masculine and the feminine, whether
absolutely.
it's
And
a
weaken both of them. Actually, weaken both of them.
weaken both. Yep. Yep. And then it's really easy. And then it weakens the family structure. And then it's just like the society comes unglued.
It
Now,
just
we're not saying to be politically correct here. I say masculine and feminine in particular because there can be two men that one carries the masculine, one carries the feminine, and vice versa with women. Ain't my thing to judge. Ain't my monkeys, ain't my circus. I talk in terms of traditional partnerships because that's what I know. That's how I'm wired. I don't talk about the other
Listen,
because
on
that's
that one,
not,
I will say
no.
this. You're talking about a minority nonetheless. You might as well say what we could just as well say, well, make it on a racial basis. How many blacks are there in the world? Say 10%. Everything has to be equated to that. Talk from where you're coming from, and those around you will understand it, and those that are not will understand it as well. And and
Exactly. I
and
have to
we've been
speak from my truth. I've been
correct.
trying to doing this YouTube thing and videos is just coming from my truth. And my truth isn't that. I can't speak of that. I can't speak of being an indigenous person. I can't speak of being a person of color. I can't
Exactly.
speak of being a LGBTQ
Whatever.
XYZMNOP.
Yeah. Well, that's all that external stuff being imposed
All
upon us
external
and
stuff.
causing it to
And
happen.
yeah, I don't talk about that. I talk about, and a lot of times I'll use masculine, feminine just to get the principles down,
Hmm.
because those are two principles. They're two polarities. They're negative and positive polarities that are meant to, masculine being the positive polarity, and then feminine being the receptive, the negative.
I
Not
understand
good
that.
or bad, but and there's the attraction. The attraction comes because you have the two. Now you have two overly masculine people, right? You've seen this, two positives. What do? Boo! That's like there's too many chiefs in that kitchen. Or you
Yeah.
get too like overly feminine stuff, and then there's not. And this can be, I'm not talking about men and women, but then it's kind of like you don't get that drive for, you don't get the forward power of the masculine energies, you know, um, the penetrating energy, so to speak. But it is,
I
it's like
understand.
as it is in the physical, it is in, the energetic. And I think that's like so important that we understand, just like the mechanics behind things and the mechanics behind masculine and feminine. And it's not, it's just how things work. And you divide that up, you pit one against the other, then you don't have the magnetism and that beautiful power that's generated by magnets coming together, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's an incredible amount of power and force there. But you don't get that if you divide that and you have one, all upset and the other
Hmm.
one because they're being a man. They're being a woman. Not condoning bad behavior, but we just behave differently with
You
things.
do actually. Yeah, you actually do.
Yeah, process things differently, act on things differently. We have our brains are just completely rewired. Testosterone versus estrogen. When that happens prenatally and then it happens as infants, and then there's certain waves like as you develop where there's an injection of it. It's scientifically proven. It wires the brain differently. So little girls that respond to, and they're looking at mom and dad and they're like imitating them and they're like glued on mom and dad because they're responsive,
Right.
and little boys, I mean, little boys like,
Yep.
Johnny, come here. Like, they could
Get
care
far
less.
enough away from it, standing back far enough away becomes kind of humorous. It can be anyway, but then as soon as you start taking that one, especially verbally out loud in public, then you got somebody right there telling you, "Oh yeah, but look at all this horror that just happened down the street, or over in New Orleans, or wherever the hell in the world." And there's always that too going on. Man, this place we live in is a real circus, ain't it?
It's a shit show. That's
Yeah, it
all there
is.
is to it. It's just kind of, and it's getting more and more a bigger show. It's kind of what's going down. But the flip side is that you have free will. You form up your own reality. You'll attract the things you need in your life. You'll attract them. It's like, and we don't understand like the whole karmic balance and stuff, kind of going back to what we talked about before. We don't know the karmic balance of it. We don't know if somebody's being victimized because in a past life they did a lot of victimizing. So in this life, it switched. The victim gets to be the victimizer, the victimizer gets to be the victim, and they're going to play it out. This is very high level thinking with it, but I believe it's true. We are playing out a different scenario to learn. So it can't, it's like we deprive. I'm not saying it's okay and it should be condoned. I'm not saying that at all. People that can't control themselves and, harm other people, especially children, don't need to be floating around society. So don't get me wrong on that. But, it's for us to judge it in a way of morally condemn them. It's a tricky thing. I don't want people like that floating around. I don't want somebody floating around that's going to do harm to me and
or those around you that you actually see and know, or anything like that. You want peace and you want harmony, because that's your center point. That's where you're coming from. That's what you want. That's where you find your greatest solace point, for instance. And that's,
I like that.
You like that. So therefore, that's what you want to have around. It's like your home, as you indicated primarily before. It is your little mecca, if you will, or what is it? The other one, not mecca, but
it's I know where. Okay,
oasis. It's your little oasis. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all want that. That's peace. That's harmony, joy. Everything is the way it should be.
Right. And then you think about, war-torn countries and all the horrible things that are happening in Gaza, Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's not on my doorstep. I'm not going to be Pollyanna about it, but it's not on my doorstep to get upset about. Now, if it was my lineage and if I'm, and I have something connection to it, then maybe I'm called to action with it because I'm connected. But am I going to arbitrarily get all worked up and go out and try to save the situation? No, because I'm not connected to it. It's not mine to do that with. It's not mine to be active. I can do the most good in the world as a whole by becoming me. And that's my gift to the world.
And that's where you need to spend your time focusing upon. The thing of it is it's that old be in the world but not of the world kind of a point of view, because we are in the world, period, and we interact with the world and we walk around in the world, so we are in the world. So we can't just act as if it isn't there. That's That's not a reflection of the reality we find ourselves within. But there is what you and I are pointing to, talking about, sharing, is the understanding, or that it is possible to, with all of that, not be caught into all of it, and to walk at a level above it. So in a way, you're not of the world, you're in the world, but you're not of it. Now, how far away from it you are, well, you get too far away and you don't even touch it. Then you're out, you're living, if you're still walking around on this earth, you're out there all by yourself. Well, that's not what you want community. You want people to interact with. You want things to interact with. Pets, you want access to food. You don't want to have to do all of the physical labor. So here we go. We get caught back into the world. We'll never get, as long as we're walking around here talking and interacting with each other, we're in the world. So we have to find an accommodating way to navigate it all. And
I think this is so important, Maurice. It's so important because there's so much, especially in maybe the spiritual communities, about ascension, and they want to ascend out of here. Well, you know what, honey bear, you're going to die. You're going to die sooner than later. You'll be ascending out of here. That ain't the goal.
Yeah.
That's already going to happen. You're ascending, because you go back to where, if you say it's the higher ranges, you go back to your immortal. You will ascend out of here. For me, the purpose is descension. We talked about this before, is descending fully, is fully embracing my avatar and being a human. I chose this. I came into this. Why? What is it for me? Experience and learn. It's like, enjoy this ride as a human. It's going to be over so quickly. It's going to be over in a blink. You look at your life, Maurice. Does it sometimes feel like a blink of an eye, and then sometimes eternity?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all going to be over with so quickly, no matter what. So why not fully be here? I like to, bring the higher elements. I want to raise my vibration up, but while I still have my feet on the ground, I'm human. But how much can I expand myself into higher vibrations while I'm still walking on my feet on the planet?
Yes, and so what we're actually talking about is how to do that, and that's, here we go back into the closer you can get. It's probably been said a million times by a million other people along the way. The closer you can get to the ever-present now, the better off you'll be. Now, how you achieve that or get there is unique and individual, but that is what you need to do, and how you do it is, there is no specific one way to do it. There's many roads that lead up that mountain, aren't there? There's probably as many as there are traveling it. They're similar enough, but they're not the same. And in the end, you have to allow it. And that's another thing too, allowing. We've gone over that back and forth numerous ways and times. You have to allow that to permeate your own beingness. And what goes along with that, grace comes along with that, among other things.
You got to allow grace in. You got to allow
integrity, all of the virtues start manifesting, and that's where your focus becomes. You're not so worried about you just are that, and in that art, that beingness, that's who you are. That's you spending your lifetime, the portions of your lifetime here and now, in the here and now. That's all you're here to do, really.
I'd like to say amen to that. I'd like to say, but I'm not so sure I want to use that word.
Yeah.
Just like the word remember, with all this, I still am just like, oh my gosh, and just shifted consciousness about a lot of words we use, like worship and pray, and praying on people, all these things. I have no idea the amen thing, but I think it has something to do with Ra and
Amun Ra or something like that.
Yeah, so I just say, all right. And even like saying hallelujah, I can't really want to say that anymore either. So all I can say is like, yay.
Well, we're stuck with language in this medium anyway, so we'll use it to the best of our ability. And and hope, and just know that, well, we did the best we could. Now let's not beat ourselves up about it 10 minutes after
Onward,
it's done.
yeah, onward and upward. Because you know what, my best, and this is like the four agreements. You know, one of those is doing the best you can in every now,
Yeah.
paraphrase. But it is so true. Is like my best. Like last night, Maurice, I was so exhausted. I was so tired that my mind, it's like I kind of lost control of my emotions, my feelings. I got in like this, I feel like I got dark place. So I got up out of bed and I went outside and I sat outside. I pulled out my ceremonial smoke blend and I just sat under the stars, whatever they are up there. They're beautiful. I sat
Hmm.
under there and I just like working and coming back centered and letting that go. And I was so tired. It's like you wake up in the morning, Elisa, and I just had to reset my memory about me instead of getting caught up in all this stuff. In the morning, it's going to be a different day because I'll be rested. You know, so if you had asked if I had to do something or interact with somebody last night in that state, wouldn't have been my best would have been not so great, as opposed to like in the morning when I'm rested, my best is better. You know, so we're not expected. I mean, I think this is like a huge thing is we're expected the best we can in any situation. And it'll vary. It'll vary according to where you are and how you're feeling from a day-to-day basis. And then of course, obviously trajectory through your lifetime. You know, I can do way better now than I could do 10 years ago, much less 20 or 30 years ago.
At some things, the other things you can't do so good as you did 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, there's those things too. I'm talking about more like my response to people and things in my
Yeah,
life,
I know.
stuff
I
like
just thought
that.
I'd
But
throw it
yeah,
out.
the other stuff is like I went skiing yesterday and it was like I loved it. I do a great job and all that, but I also know that I'm not in a 20-year-old body no more,
Nope,
you
you
know.
can't do some stuff you used to be able to do.
No, and I don't want to fall because his body breaks when it falls now,
And
you know.
right, it hurts. Yeah, different ways, and it's not as limber as it used to be. It's still pretty limber, but not like before.
Not like, oh no, not like before at all.
Mm-mm.
But and that's I'm totally cool with that. I'm totally fine. I'm not trying to keep, you know, with the elixir of youth. I mean, do as best I can take care of myself. And, you know, I'm getting old, I'm getting wrinkles, skin's changing, thing, you know, hair's getting grayer by the moment. And that is just the way it is. And, you know, what do we do?
we The wisdom tells me to say this: you be the best you can be in the moment you find yourself at any given moment, and trust that that's sufficient to the moment, and move on. And
Yeah.
try and don't be aware, don't fall so easily into the traps that are set before you, because they're always there.
Maurice, what do you think it is about the trap of the past? Besides our lack of training it, which is probably a huge thing, but it's such a trap. I'm just kind of circling back on a few of our themes. You know, one
Sure.
of them we were talking about getting stuck in the past, and you know, that's just like a trap. And I just wonder like where that's so ingrained. It's so ingrained in people getting stuck in the past, you know, and it just does not help. Obviously, it's not about the now. I mean, the past serves a purpose, remembering certain things, and we can, I think, use it in the eternal now to change
Hmm.
now, you know, by repatterning, maybe rethinking of things in the past. But it's just, that's a tricky one, you
Well,
know?
let me try and approach that from a kind of a different way, but it's not unique. The realm of the past and the future too, but the past, as you're mentioning, that's a mental realm kind of a thing. It goes on within your mind. It
Hmm.
doesn't exist it exists within your mind. Well, when we talk about the mind, we're also talking about ego, which is sense of self, sort of, among other
Yeah.
things. And without going into great detail about definitions of words, it's a mental realm kind of a thing. And that's, if you're in your mental realm, that keeps you limited. It keeps you at a very low level of awareness. because you're also, there's a part of you that already knows there's a higher realm of you, the greater self, if you will, among other things, other ways of expressing it. The spiritual realm, all kinds of names that are floating out there, but there's more to you than just that. But as in your ego, if you let your mind run your life only, you're trapped in the mental realm. Well, within that mental realm is the past. You keep stuck there, you're stuck. The system doesn't, the system, I talk about it, the matrix, if you will. As long as you're in that realm, it doesn't really care. Just so long as you're in that realm, they've got you, because you're not looking inward to the greater you. You have to break out of that. And the only way you break out of that is recognize that there's more to be had. And that happens. I maintain that's a happening, not a doing.
Exactly. It's the heart realm. That's the being realm. We talk all the time, the being and doing.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people that don't acknowledge that's a reality. They think that's foolishness, and they scoff at it. And typically they're the ones that are caught into the financial realm. Jesus, what's the old saying? He who dies with the most toys wins. That's materialism. And they accept that as the only reality. Well, not everybody accepts that as the only reality. And the ones that don't they're aware that there's other possibilities available to humankind, and they're kind of attracted to them. And the only way to get to them is to realize that the mental realm isn't the only realm floating around here. And as long as you keep stuck in that mental realm, which is your past, for instance, a major portion of it, if you keep stuck in things that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, then you're not living in the current now, you're living in the past. You're living in your mental realm.
Right.
And there's another one too. It's usually applied to the ego. The ego is not the boss of you. The ego is a tool. It's a useful tool.
The mind is a tool. It
is, but if you allow it to be the boss, then you're stuck.
It's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. Yeah, no, I thoroughly agree. Coming from a woman that I all my creativity and all the things I've done in my life, I've had a very strong mental mind capacity. And, it's how do you use that as a tool? And instead of having it lead you around by the tail, you know what I mean? Is using that as that precious divine, because it's a divine tool. We're created perfectly as humans. There's no mistake here. But the problem is that we haven't been instructed in the truth of who we are and the design of these bodies. Our creative, for one thing, like our creative abilities. I feel like part of the problem with the control factors in this world is they don't want people to wake up to the power that they have inherent. Right. And their power is going to come from their heart, from emotions from the heart, not emotions reactive from the mind. You keep people reactive, so their emotions are, and their heart's all turmoil, and their thinking all goes crazy. And then you've got whether people say it's Loosh, the power source, whatever, but the negative energies are being used against humanity. So I think it all gets resolved when we understand how to drive this vehicle, the proper use of it.
And like I say, what we talk about and what underlies everything we say back and forth with each other is you recognize it's there. It is a tool, but it's not the boss. Yeah. And it's possible to function within this world in that reality. And the more you allow that to happen, and it is a happening, you allow it to happen, the inner comes out, and things go smoother and smoother and smoother for you. We know we don't walk around on water or above the ground. We don't do that. That's not part of our nature as human beings. But there are levels of perception, different one from the other, in the same room at the same time. Some of them are confused and panic driven, and all kinds of bad things occur. And then there's a way you can be in the same situation and gently eat your meal and not be affected by any of it, even though you're still going on around. You see scenes of that kind of thing, even on freaking. You'll see it on YouTube sometimes, and you'll probably see it on Twitter too, for that matter. Some gunman comes into a restaurant and there's a guy sitting at a table sipping a cup of soup, and he just sits there and continues to do it while all this chaos is going around him, and it never touches him. I've seen plenty of, well, not plenty, but I've seen several situations of live videos where that happened.
Yep.
And it's not unfamiliar to you either. So there you go.
But you know what? It's that emotional. Once again, it just ties back into what we emotionally react to. If we're fearful, if we get all upset by it, we're connected into it. So you think about the person, whether this really happens, whether it's just but it's a perfect, symbol of a person that is neutral. A person's not reacting to it. So the thing can go all around them, but it's not, they didn't draw it in to themselves.
Correct. Yeah.
So I know we're kind of getting on an hour and a half here, but there's just like one last thing that ties in with that a quick little touching in on is that neutrality. Is just, for me, it's like the world isn't like an instance, something can happen. Say Maurice and I are sitting there and there's a group of people and something goes down, and it's like, is there any really meaning in of it itself, except for the people doing stuff? It's just like it's like a neutral thing. Or maybe make it a little easier. There's a vase sitting there and it's, I think it's god awful ugly. Maurice thinks it's the most beautiful thing ever. Well, it's just the vase it's just the thing, and people, it's just like, it's neutral. We give it meaning. So the altercation that happened with a friend of yours, or problem with it, it's their thing. For us, it's like a neutral thing. We can observe it. We should just be able to observe it, but but being neutral is not let it in. We could help in whatever way we can, but remain neutral to the situation. I feel like that for me is one of my power tools, is neutrality, is just not getting caught up into other people's dramas, is just to be it's like their thing, their drama, what's going on in the world. This ties back to just actually how we started the whole conversation, is a tip here for everybody, is just developing a state of neutrality and knowing that the world, that these things don't have an intrinsic meaning to it, is what we give it. So what kind of meaning do you want to give it for you? Do you want to get all worked up and stuff and connected into it and drawn into all that drama? Well, go ahead. I prefer to see things, I can remain neutral, and then I can be of assistance. Then I can offer advice and stuff like that from a place of neutrality that's not picking sides, that's not, you're right, they're wrong, getting all judgy about it, because that's not going to help anybody coming from that. Any advice that comes from that place does not help anybody.
Bingo. And you're just talking about a higher level of awareness or consciousness or energy or vibration. All of those terms apply to the same thing. You're either caught into the lower density or the higher density, and how you respond depends on from what position you're coming from. We can talk about it in those terms. Given a choice, what would you rather do? Would you rather walk around not knowing stuff and bumping into walls all the time, or would you like to be, a really, really smooth at functioning and operating at a higher level of awareness? And the way you do that is like what we've been talking about forever. You don't get caught into the traps of judgmentalism and wanting to be the meter of justice to the whole world or anything around you at any given moment. It's not yours, and there's all kinds of reasons why that's not wise anyway. Or
the administrator of punishment. That's a big one. I'm just going to withhold my energy from that person. I'll show them. Yeah. That's not where it's at all.
No.
And we may know that, but do you apply that? Hold yourself rigorously to those things.
That's another one. That's part of integrity, is where you actually watch how you do things as you do them. It's not a question of having to sit there and plot and make decisions, conscious of where the dishes, do I do this? That takes time. So that's the flow is just doing it. But when you do look back upon it, you can see what works and what doesn't work most efficiently and
Oh my,
wisely and kindly and all of those good things. And you say, damn, the way it works is don't get caught into these traps that are forever present around us. And yes, there's all kinds of traps I never even heard of before. I learn about new ones every damn day. I said,
yeah.
damn, I didn't even know that. And I've been around all this time and I've read all these books and met around all these wise and smart and intelligent people. And I never heard about that. How did that happen?
I know. Oh my God, it's so funny, but it is. But it's exciting because there's always new things to incorporate, more new tools to put into our tool chest, right?
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, no, it's like so true. I had something I was gonna say about that. I don't know. I think it just like went out of my mind, but yeah, no, I think it passed. Maybe it'll come back before we close up here, but yeah, it's just expanding our tool chest. Oh, I know. Is that, unfortunately, fortunately for me, I've always been burdened with a consciousness or a conscience that even as a little girl, like you'd see this stuff going on, I always would be like, there was always a little voice, like just kind of showing me, explaining like a different way of seeing things. Some people aren't burdened with that. And I talk about like it's a burden blessing, but there's been times in my life it's like, can I just get away with it? Yeah. And
Well,
that little angel on my shoulder is going, no, no, that's what's going on. And there's people that don't have that. And, God bless them. They're on their journey. They're not going to wake up. They're not going to be conscious of these things. And that's nothing you can do about it.
that's correct. And that's another thing you learn along the way. You learn to say, okay, let them be free. Let them be themselves. Let them
Yeah.
be responsible for their own actions or inactions because you hold yourself responsible for your own actions and inactions, don't you? You've always
Yes.
done that. You always
Yeah.
look back upon yourself and say, what could I have done otherwise? You're self-critic. Who's your worst critic? Yourself.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Well, you you learn to even forgive yourself of that along the way, but you recognize that
Yeah.
that is a strong tendency in human nature. Hell, you've lived it and experienced it yourself. You know what it is.
Well, forgiving yourself doesn't give you license to do whatever, not at
No,
all.
it
You
doesn't.
forgive yourself because now you have a different way of viewing what it is, and you're transcending it. You don't need that anymore. That's part of the forgiveness is that things are working out in the balance.
Yeah, yeah. There was a movie. It was by a Mexican guy. The name of it I can't recall. Damn it! It was kind of an artsy film, and it was probably 30 years ago, or probably in the 80s. He did it. Oh Jesus!
What was it
Somebody in
about?
Oh, it was basically about it's really weird. I don't even know if I can go there. It was a guy was seeking uh the epitome of wisdom or whatever the hell, but climbing up I want to say the 7-story mountain, but I know that's not what it was. It was something else. But it was by a Mexican guy and it was in the 80s, and somebody in here has seen it or heard it and knows exactly the name of it and by whom. If I ever, I might even put it in the comments under this thing. When it gets posted,
Yeah.
I'll look around. I'll find it. By God, it shows him basically going through various scenarios where it's like levels of society. It's
Hmm.
really weird, and within that level, this is how things are lived. And he's walking through it, and it shows it in all its craziness, to a degree, but a lot of it's really artsy, okay. And then he goes up, and then in the end, they're at the top of a mountain, and there's like a half a dozen of them sitting around at the table, and they all look like wizened old men, with the beards and the robes and shit like that. No women that I remember in there. at that mountain table, which doesn't seem
Yeah.
right. Maybe there was one, I just don't remember it. And that's not even the end. But it's like you could get stuck in any one of these levels along the way, and that is the reality that you find yourself within, and that's where you're at. And like you're kind of just a victim of that reality that you find yourself within, or you can rise through them and above them, and reach different levels of awareness and experience in life.
Well, if you don't see there's other levels and you think this is the only level, then there you be. But it's
That's
when you
correct.
start seeing the other levels, and that's been my driving force is like this level, the level I came in on was so miserable. I wasn't happy. And it sought me, it propelled me to seek out, answers. What's going on? Why? And then it's always propelling me forward in life, just with different questions now and a different type of,
Well,
flavor to
where's
my
that coming
quest.
from? That certainly isn't coming from your mind. It's coming from your inner. You know
It
that.
might, yeah,
That's
exactly.
the driving force of you, and you know
Exactly.
that. So
Yeah.
you've come to that point in your life. You're very much aware of that reality, and you're not saying no to it or I'm afraid of it. You're saying yes to it, and it just in the saying yes to it and allows it to grow further and show itself more. And then
Oh,
you are being you in a more perfect form than you were before. You're growing.
I love that, Maurice. I have such an image of that. And I think it's a beautiful way to wrap up our conversation because it
Okay.
really is about being authentic. It's really about being, like I was talking about the reconciliations, about forgiveness, all these things that hold us down because we are meant to kind of go up layer by layer, go up in vibration, up in consciousness, opening up and understanding more clearly what's going on. And that would be my wish and blessing to everybody out there and everybody listening to this, that that your new year is going to be full of wonderful conscious awakening opportunities, and that you can seize on those and you take them in as a warrior and you go, all right, and you work through that to like bigger and brighter horizons on the other side.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. And we've said it before many ways. Just be open to the possibility that you can be more than you were yesterday. More appropriate, more kind, more loving, more giving, more whatever, as opposed to being stuck with the external world, which is always around us. And we're not trying to say you can't exist in it. You got to, just don't get caught into the traps that are
Yeah.
thrown there. So and
Yeah.
you see them as such, and then you have a tendency to say, I see it, I understand it, I can deal with it, I can talk about it, but I'm not stuck there. I'd rather go out there and smell the flowers in my yard.
You know what? Heaven is at hand. That's what comes down to me. It's at hand. It's available right now if I choose to live in it. And I can choose not to. We
Correct.
may be in all kinds of dark programming. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that's very dark stuff. Fine. There it is. Heaven's still at hand for me right now. And it doesn't, save me from challenges. It's I still have to work. I still have to keep lining up. I still have to keep doing the best I can and being open and courageous and all those things. But it's, the smelling the roses is available right now. And like, I don't know, it's quite a journey being a human, especially
It
right
sure
now.
is. It sure is.
It's crazy. Okay. Any last words you want to say of wisdom, Maurice, to everybody for 2025?
Just know that a lot of shit's going to show up that's going to want to grab your attention all kinds of ways, and pay attention to what's around so you don't get hit by a brick coming your way. But other than that, don't get sucked too deeply into it, because ultimately they're all external traps intended to keep you stuck here at the lowest level possible they can manage it. So
Yeah.
therefore, defy them. We're all kind of defiant anyway. So,
Yeah.
but you don't have to stand up in front of a train on the tracks with your hand in the air, because that's not wise.
You'll get mowed down
You'll get
for sure.
mowed down, but be smart enough to not get on the tracks to be mowed
Exactly.
down. And like I say, they get well. Twitter's really good for that. There's all kinds of options available to be upset about shit. I can tell you that.
Oh my God. That's well, not even going into that, but that whole, what Musk is doing with everything. I didn't want to say his name. Blah, 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 blah. That's a whole other freaking minefield there. But
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
yeah,
It's great for discussion. It's a hell of a good show. It really
yeah.
is a good show, but and it's entertain to me. It's entertainment anymore more than anything. But I have to be conversant with it to be able to discuss it. So I still watch it, but I don't get sucked into it too deeply. You know,
I yeah, if for me, YouTube and Facebook is is there's a lot of social media for me, and I kind of like I got an account the other day on X, and I kind of don't I haven't even looked at it since then. I'm like, who do I even want to like follow? What do it's just I don't know. It's just one more distraction that I just don't feel like I I need right now.
okay. Well, if information is supposed to come your way, somebody will send it to you.
It will, and it'll come around, and maybe I'll just dive into it a little bit more later. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it's like,
You're well advised to spend your time doing what you like to do the best,
yeah,
and just do that. Because
yes,
when that's you spending your life your way,
exactly. I love
and in
it.
the process, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing in the moment that you're doing it. And
Ah,
if that means having lunch with somebody that shows up on your doorstep in town, which is a nice little town, Santa Fe is a really nice town to go into. It's that's what you do,
yeah,
and you have the world can be blowing up all over the place, but you're where you're having you're sitting in that restaurant with the gunman shooting everybody, and you're eating your soup and not even
yeah.
feeling it.
The bullets are flying around.
Yeah, they are,
Oh, I
and
love
you're
it. Thank you so much, my friend. Those are like some beautiful, beautiful little wisdom drops to wrap up our conversation. And as always, Maurice, we'll stay on and chat a little bit
sure.
together. But for everybody else, I hope that this was very inspiring to you. And if nothing else, entertaining.
Yeah, entertaining at least.
If nothing else, can we get a little entertainment?
Yeah.
Okay. As always, everybody, peace from within. Love you. Bye bye.